What's up, everybody? This is the Hedge Mage, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at some of my favorite new blue cards from Outlaws at Thunder Junction that were printed at the common rarity. So yes, these are now pauper legal. Well, like I have stated previously, this set doesn't really bring in a ton of stuff that's either going to be uh, new format staples or going to be very format warping. That being said, there is definitely a few cards within this set that I think are worth taking a look at. So today I have curated for you my top 3 new blue commons from the set. As always, guys, if you enjoy the content that I create, if you could leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. And with that said, let's get into it. Coming in at number 3, we have Phantom Interference. For 1 blue, it is an instant. It has Spree. Now, this Spree is a new mechanic being featured in this set, which means you can choose one or more additional costs. On this card, there are 2 different additional costs that you can pay when you cast it. So for an additional 3 generic mana, you can create a 2/2 white spirit creature token with flying, or for an additional 1 generic mana, counter target spell unless its controller pays 2 generic mana. So this card is most of the time just probably going to be a worse mana leak, though ultimately if they can get around paying 2 mana or 3 mana, if they're going to be able to pay that, it's kind of about the same, really. I mean, technically, a mana leak is better since it requires them to pay 1 more. This is just kind of like maybe it's a slightly better spell pierce for 2 mana. It is an okay counter spell, though a lot of times you want to be able to do hard counters on things, which this does not. It does give them an option to pay mana for it, so you're going to have to it's definitely something that if your opponent thinks you're running it, they can play around it pretty easily. On the other side, you can create a 2/2 white spirit creature token with flying. And there are maybe a couple things in the meta that you could actually be able to use that against. Namely, you could block a Glint Hawk, have a, by surprise, or say block a Delver of Secret by surprise, which your opponent might not see them coming. However, if they're on Delver of Secrets, they're probably going to have counter spells of their own, and you definitely have to dump, quite a bit of mana into this card in order to use it, meaning that really only one deck is probably going to even look at this card as a possible option for it. That would be any type of Tron deck that is in blue. I have seen a mono blue Tron deck. It doesn't really take up a whole lot of the meta share. It's a very, very small portion of it. So I definitely am not going to recommend people start playing that just because this card comes into the format. I don't really think it's going to make that deck better than it already is or push it over the edge in any way. Though this is a pretty interesting card and definitely an option for Tron players. And coming in at number 2, I have Take the Fall for 1 blue, which is an instant. And target creature gets -1/-0 until end of turn. It gets -4/-0 until end of turn if you control an outlaw. So in other words, if you control an assassin, a mercenary, pirate, ranger, or warlock. And you can draw a card. So it's kind of a new cantrip spell. I would probably have this as my number 1 new card if Monastery Swiftspirit was still in the format. This would be a very good card against them, as it would allow us to basically reduce their power after they had played, all their spells that they were going to play, and then maybe have a cheap blocker against it. Or just not block and take 0. So that would be a nice little card against Swift Spear, but Swift Spear is not here anymore. So this card seems slightly less useful, though it is a new cantrip, and I think there are certain decks, like say, Is It Terror, that might want to be taking a look at this, as well as even Dimir Fairies, or I've also seen Dimir Terror as well, going into more of a grindy game plan, and they've been running things like Thorn of the Black Rose, which is an assassin, so it is an outlaw. And so this is just another cantrip for them, which you can have some nice combat tricks with it, as well as it's just not taking damage when you don't want to take damage. So kind of as a way to tempo out your opponent, also lets you draw a card and put instant and sorceries in your graveyard. So I think there is definitely an argument here to maybe want to run it in like an Is It Terror or even a Dimir Terror, depending on what your build is for each of those. I mean, basically any of the Monarch cards that you run in either Is It Terror or in Dimir are going to be outlaws. So this would synergize with them. The only downside there is that generally speaking in those decks, I haven't seen more than 2 to 3 of those cards, so the likelihood that you are going to have an outlaw out is pretty low. I mean, if you wanted to maybe run an extra run, go up to 3. I don't know if you're going to go up to 4 because they are 4 mana cards, and you don't necessarily, especially in this format, want to have your hand full of 4 mana spells. It's generally not an ideal situation to be in, since usually the mana curves in this format are quite low. Still, I think this is a pretty good card and has a lot of utility. As of right now, I'm not quite sure if it's going to replace any of the other cantrips that are being run in either of the decks that I have just mentioned, though it still is a pretty interesting card. And my top new blue card from this set is Seize the Secrets. For 2 generic and a blue, you get a sorcery. This spell costs 1 generic mana less to cast if you've committed a crime this turn. Targeting your opponents, anything they control, and or cards in their graveyard is a crime. And you get to draw 2 cards. So when I look at this card, I don't see a 3 mana draw 2 cards spell. I see a 2 mana draw 2 cards. And that is because it is incredibly easy in this format, not to mention just in this game, to commit a crime. Crimes are going to happen all the time. Basically, any piece of interaction you're going to have is going to target players. It's going to target stuff they control, can target their graveyard. I mean, imagine this card with a Relic of Progenitors out. All you have to do is tap that artifact. All of a sudden, you've committed a crime. All right, then I can spend 2 mana and draw 2 cards. Are there better cards in this format that also draw you cards? Yes, there definitely are. So the big question is will this replace anything that's getting played in blue decks as of right now? That I'm not so certain of. However, I think this card is a choice that people could choose to run. I probably wouldn't run a full playset of it like I would with a, say, a Ponder or a Preordained. I definitely would run playsets of those cards. I might run a 1 or 2 of these in a deck that's in blue just to get some extra cards in my hand. Though ultimately, at least we'll probably see more play in Pauper EDH, since it's just another way for them to draw 2 cards. And that's going to do it for today's video, guys. Thanks again to anyone who stuck it out to the end. You are a pretty cool person. But I would like to know what you guys think about the picks for today's video. Do you agree, disagree? Are there cards that I did not highlight from this new set that are commons that you think should have made the cut? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. As always, I hope you all are having a wonderful day, and I will see you all next time.